Do pro-life laws result in mothers dying when they should be receiving care? That is the focus of today's episode. Stay tuned. Hi folks, welcome back to the Pro-Life Guys podcast, a show dedicated to equipping you with the tools that you need to have compassionate and compelling conversations about abortion so that together we can change minds, save lives, and transform our culture. My name is Cam. I am the host of the show. Thank you for being along for the ride. And this is a bit of a heavier topic today. I mean, obviously, we're always talking about abortion, so it's always quite heavy. But today we are addressing concerns that are becoming more and more commonly expressed, obviously, as we lead up to the election in America. More and more stories of mothers who have tragically died in recent years, the spotlight being on years since Roe versus Wade was overturned, and the supposed impact that pro-life laws in states like Georgia have on the livelihood and medical attention that mothers receive during pregnancy. I'm sure many of you have seen articles like the two that I'll drop in the show notes below, one about Amber Thurman, one about Candi Miller, two mothers who tragically died in the state of Georgia in the year 2022, shortly after Roe versus Wade was overturned and the trigger laws came into effect in Georgia, where there's a near complete ban on abortion. And Kamala Harris, along with all of her other cronies in the pro-abortion industry, have been dragging these up, conveniently timed, right before a presidential election, accusing Donald Trump and the Republicans of overturning Roe versus Wade and enacting these pro-life laws, which kill mothers experiencing challenging pregnancies. And the story goes that these mothers would be alive today if they had been allowed to have abortions. In both the case of Candi Miller and Amber Thurman, as you can read in the articles that I link below, these mothers did not want to continue with their pregnancies. Both of them had born children. Both of them did not want to continue to care and support and provide for their preborn children. Both of them were prescribed or obtained the abortion pill. Tragically, the abortion pill resulted in their child dying, and in dying, that their children were not fully expelled from their womb, and that the mothers contracted sepsis or a blood infection or an internal infection resulting from parts of the dead child remaining within the womb of the mother. These infections can become incredibly painful and harmful. In the case of Candi Miller, painful to the point of what some professionals have looked at overdosing on pain medication, especially, and tragically as well, sought out street-level fentanyl to... They don't know exactly what she was trying to obtain, whether it was trying to pain medicate, whether she was overwhelmed by the entire circumstance that she was dealing with, whether this was suicide, whether this was accidental overdose. It all gets pointed back towards the pro-life legislation in Georgia, which she did not want to go to a hospital, or she did not pursue full medical intervention because she was fearful of what they would say about her obtaining abortion out of state. A similar case for Amber Thurman, where receiving the abortion pill, it's a two-step process, and tragically the child who died was not fully delivered from her womb, as horrifyingly as that sounds. That's how the abortion pill works, that these children are generally delivered within the parents' bathrooms, in their homes, at their places of work, wherever they are at the time, and that she was experiencing profound medical difficulty, and that medical practitioners in Georgia did not respond to the sepsis that she was dealing with. They did not want to perform a D&C, dilation curettage, which is generally associated with performing an abortion, to remove the remainder of her dead child. And because of that, she died from her sepsis. This is a very similar tragic story to what happened to Savita In Ireland, as we have covered in previous episodes before and is highly documented in my colleague Jonathan Van Maren's book, Patriots, how abortion advocates will leverage these tragic stories of mothers dying because of their abortion decisions and often complicated by poor medical practice, inaccurate or insufficient medical intervention. And they are weaponized by the pro-abortion movement as an argument against pro-life legislation. And I want to talk about how we can and should respond to these cases, because the response should not be that pro-lifers weaken our stance and say, okay, we need to relax pro-life legislation to allow for abortion in cases of medical complication. Abortion, as defined by Canadian Physicians for Life, the American Association for Pro-Life Gynecologists and Obstetricians, is the direct and intentional termination of pregnancy or the ending of the life of that preborn child. And doctors and medical professionals around the world, including those two entities that I listed above, have declared and acknowledged that abortion, being that direct and intentional killing of that child, is never medically necessary, that there is always an alternative procedure or intervention. And so this is something that we need to be familiar with. And so I want to walk through a little bit of background on this to give ourselves a little bit of information to stew upon as we reflect on this. I'm sure there's going to be lots of comments on YouTube. We've been getting more and more comments on that, which is great, driving up the algorithms and provoking the conversation. I think it's fantastic. I think there's a bunch of considerations that we have to really weigh in on to dispel the lies of the pro-abortion movement. Tragically, as has been said by thinkers throughout the ages, a lie can make it halfway around the world before the truth has time to put their pants on. And that often goes for these cases. And these are cases that, like I said, happened 2 years ago. The pro-life movement has to be ready for them. As I spoke with Mark Harrington about in one of my recent interviews, I'm not exactly sure when it's going to get posted, but pro-life movement has to be ready for heart-wrenching and heartbreaking cases like this. And we have to know that literally every single pro-life state in America that has enacted any kind of pro-life legislation, whether it's a state like Florida that has a heartbeat, a detectable heartbeat ban somewhere around the age of 6 weeks gestation for that preborn boy or girl, whether it's a state like Georgia that has a complete ban on abortion, whether it is another state that has some other modified abortion restriction, every pro-life state legislation allows doctors to exercise their medical judgment to treat mothers with pregnancy emergencies. No law requires imminence or certainty before the doctor can act to save the patient's life. No pro-life legislation. And you can go through them one by one and see how clearly this is laid out, how clearly it is laid out for how a medical practitioner can intervene without directly and intentionally killing their child, the child of the mother who is seeking intervention. This is something that needs to be acknowledged. And not only that, but the vast majority of laws are not perfect from a pro-life standpoint anyways. Like most of the pro-life laws that abortion providers or abortion proponents are talking about actually have exemptions for abortion when a mother's life is in danger, something that we as pro-lifers would not accept or should not accept ideologically, and something that we should be working towards eliminating as well, for the facts that I laid out earlier, that abortion is never medically necessary. There's always alternative procedures that seek to protect and save the mother's life, but do not do so by intentionally and directly killing the life of their preborn child. What we need to look at is that this, like in Ireland, like in other places, like tragically happens in pro-abortion states, there are numerous cases that have been documented. Again, I'm going to drop a lot of links in the show notes below, one of which is from Live Action, detailing a number of cases in pro-abortion states, in California, in Nevada, in other states like that, where the abortion pill is not safe. It is absolutely not safe for preborn children, but it is not safe for mothers as well. There's a Finnish study conducted in 2009 that acknowledged that there's a 4 times higher chance that a recipient of the abortion pill regime will end up with an adverse outcome, something that they're going to have to go to generally an emergency room to address, 4 times higher than surgical abortion, let alone pregnancy and delivering that child. There's a significantly higher rate of emergency room visits for people receiving the abortion pill regime. And 75%, this is a Medicaid study done by the Lozier Institute more recently, 75% of mothers going into emergency rooms in the aftermath of the abortion pill are deemed severe or critical, which is significantly higher than those following up with medical practitioners following a surgical abortion, again, let alone a live birth or miscarriage. And so the abortion pill is incredibly risky. It is incredibly harmful towards the mothers receiving it. And that's something that is swept under the rug in the vast and overwhelming majority of cases, because the vast and overwhelming majority of cases in which mothers are hemorrhaging in emergency rooms, the vast majority of cases where mothers are experiencing sepsis and other very, very heartbreaking and harrowing conditions, even at times death, are happening in pro-abortion states. And so there's no argument against pro-life legislation, and therefore the pro-abortion media has no incentive to carry it. They're actually going to sweep them under the rug, because they will just continue to reiterate the lie that the abortion pill is safe. The number of times I have heard, and the number of times it has been said, it is insane. The number of times it has been said that the abortion pill is just as safe as Viagra or Tylenol. That's absolutely bonkers, as is showcased in both of the studies that I'll link below. And that is something that we have to recognize and acknowledge. This is not a safe procedure. This is happening regularly. This is being weaponized by the pro-abortion media. How do we talk about it, though? So that's the rant. That is the rant. That is the background that we need to be aware of. These are tragic and real stories that are happening, and pro-lifers need to be prepared for how to respond to them. How are we going to do that? Well, we're not going to refute it, right? We're not going to refute these cases by saying simply, well, it's the mother's own fault. She shouldn't have had the abortion in the first place. That might be true. That might absolutely be the solution to this, but that is probably not going to be productive and effective and efficient in the conversation, because that is likely just going to stunt or end the conversation or cause it to be significantly more emotionally charged, right? So we're not just going to say, well, these mothers are idiots for taking the abortion pill that is so risky and so dangerous. And let me tell you all of these stats and stories of people who are harmed by the abortion pill. We need better clarity on that, but that's not going to be productive in this context and at this time of the conversation, especially early on in the conversation. We'll do an episode on at what point in a conversation refutation becomes more meaningful and becomes more appropriate, but certainly not at the beginning of a conversation. Similarly, like I alluded to, we can't resolve the case, especially erroneously resolving it by saying, you know what, you're right. We need to be having this exemption for pro-life states and regions and federal or provincial or regional or wherever. The answer to mothers dying because the abortion pill is not safe is not making the abortion pill safer. It is, first of all, educating mothers to not take the abortion pill, to not have abortions in the first place. Second of all, improved medical care. Because this is what's at play in a lot of these scenarios, that particularly in the case of Amber Thurman, while I don't want to accuse those doctors of medical malpractice, we have to remember and appreciate how difficult of a job being a nurse, a doctor, medical practitioner truly is. And the fact that often they don't have all of the resources at their disposal. The fact that somebody might roll up to an emergency room at 1:00 in the morning and say, okay, we think that this is an ectopic pregnancy, but we don't know. Therefore, I cannot intervene because I don't know if this is an ectopic pregnancy. We don't have a gynecologist on call right now who can respond immediately. We don't have an obstetrician. We don't have the medical imaging at this facility. We have to go to another facility. We have to be able to do something else. The idea this would not hold for any other form of medical procedure. I mean, we've all seen enough of TV sitcoms, whether it's The West Wing or whether it's House or whether it's other medical sitcoms on TV. Like we know that you can't just rush into medical intervention of, well, Wikipedia says that this is probably cancer, so let's hook them up and start running some chemotherapy and radiation. And oops, never mind, it wasn't cancer, it's something else, and now we've made the situation a billion times worse. Or else, hey, we think that this is an ectopic pregnancy, we're going to go in and do surgery. Wait, this isn't an ectopic pregnancy, and now we have caused miscarriage of a healthy developing child that if only we had taken more time or had an expert diagnose, then we would know that we were incorrect. Sure, tragically, doctors are put and medical professionals are put in scenarios where we expect 100% accuracy from them, and sometimes that's not possible, right? I think often of the story of the guy. I mean, Tom Hanks plays him in the movie. I don't remember what the movie's called. It might be called Sullenberger or Sully or something like that. The pilot who is flying the airplane leaving from JFK or LaGuardia or whatever it was, Longoria, and they hit a flock of geese, and he lands the plane in the Hudson River, and he's being examined by the insurance company as to whether or not he could have made it back to an airport. And all of their simulators suggested, you know what, if he had made every perfect decision right from the very beginning, he could have made it back to the airport. And Tom Hanks in the movie and Captain Sullenberger in real life was like, these are not the conditions that I am working on. Sure, if I had given up entire hope on anything and just turned back immediately and not second guess this at all, then sure, I might have been able to land, but that's not how the human experience and human brain works. These doctors have to go through an appropriate checklist. I am not a doctor, and nor should I be given the responsibility or the authority to say, now in my armchair, seeing all of this from 5,000 feet, I know that you should have made XYZ calls and you would have saved this mother's life immediately if only you had done that. At times, those doctors are doing the best that they possibly can, and tragically, they're not able to save every life because sometimes the conditions are too severe for them to be able to go through what a medically appropriate workflow actually is. So that's another consideration. A consideration on top of that, tragically, is that sometimes doctors make bad decisions because they do not understand the law. We saw that in the Savita case in Ireland. I'm sure that we're going to be made aware of those cases, whether for the Amber Thurman or other cases, that there are times that there is medical malpractice. I have no idea how that is determined. That is going to be done in a court of law, and I don't think that anybody should be too quick to accuse others of medical malpractice because of how difficult their job is. And yet, if it was found that a doctor did not perform their due diligence in accordance with state legislation because they were unfamiliar with state legislation, that's on them. That's on the hospital. That's on the legislatures. That's on an inability to equip people with the accurate tools. If I am a medical professional and I am treating people incorrectly because I am unaware of the fact that there's a new procedure available that is more efficient and more streamlined and more likely to save this person's life, but that has been communicated to me by the hospital, by the American Medical Association, Canadian Medical Association, if that is not made available to me and I'm using the best information that I'm familiar with, then maybe it is on me for not seeking out that information, being aware of something as monumental as pro-life legislation. Maybe I need to acquaint myself with that information. Maybe it's a balance of my own culpability and responsibility and that of the hospital or the medical association or whatever other entities. Medical malpractice absolutely happens at times. I cannot say one way or another at this point whether or not either of these two cases or any others were a result of medical malpractice or simply medical professionals having an incredibly difficult job, and sometimes they're not able to make the right decision because of the variety of circumstances that they're faced with. That's reality. But we're missing the main point of this. Again, we're come back to the fact that these crises are happening because mothers are seeking out an abortion pill that kills their child, first of all, which is objectively an injustice, and second of all, which has been demonstrated by study after study after study that is not safe, right? That if Tylenol was producing the same degree of severe health impacts and outcomes that we are seeing from the abortion pill, it would absolutely be pulled off of every shelf in America and around the world. There's no doubt of that. If anything else like that was happening, I mean, you look at, and this is a whole nother kettle of fish, and I'm not going to rant constantly. I will get to how we should actually be responding. You look at the pushback that is going around the abortion pill reversal regimen, the high dose of hormones to try to salvage the pregnancy, and how this is being fought seemingly on every side by the FDA, by abortion proponents, by other medical practitioners, because it doesn't have a perfect rate of success. Okay, well, the abortion pill, first of all, doesn't have a perfect rate of success when it comes to killing children. It has a very high rate of success, in air brackets, of killing children, but it also has a high rate of harming mothers. If we held the abortion pill to the same standards that we're holding the abortion pill reversal to, there's no way that we would have access to the abortion pill. It's absolutely asinine, the standards that we have allowed to drop for the abortion pill because of the political element and social desire for the abortion pill. Absolutely bonkers. All that to say, here we are. Rant over, I promise. Rant over. What are we going to say? We are going to go through common ground, analogy, and question. We're not refuting like we talked about. We're not resolving like we talked about. We are going to walk through common ground, analogy, and question. We are really going to invest into the common ground as we do in many of the very severe and very heartbreaking cases. I agree with you that what happened to Amber Thurman, to Candi Miller, to countless others, Savita, is absolutely heartbreaking, and that these mothers deserve medical intervention which will save their life. Imagine, moving on to an analogy, because I do believe that though these mothers are pursuing an injustice, a grave sin, the fact that they are taking the abortion pill doesn't mean that they should die, right? It doesn't mean that we want them to die because they've made incorrect, unjust, and sinful decisions. We shouldn't want them to die. Hopefully you don't want them to die. I absolutely do not want them to die. So what is the solution? Well, the solution, imagine that a mother who was seeking to kill her born child was harmed profoundly in her pursuit of killing her born child. And she arrived at a hospital, and the medical professionals did not treat her appropriately because they were worried that in treating her, they would somehow be implicated in the killing of her born child. Would we ever suggest that the problem in that scenario is the fact that killing born children is illegal or inappropriate? And if we legalized killing born children, and in that case, the medical practitioners would have given her better support and care and could have saved her life, if only they knew that there was no legal repercussions because it was legal to kill born children. Well, no. If we're not going to legalize killing born children so that medical professionals know without a shadow of a doubt that they can heal and provide medical care to a mother who has harmed herself while killing a born child, then why is that the case for preborn children? Why would we say that the problem in these scenarios is pro-life legislation and not lack of medical best practices by the medical professionals? Why not saying that let's stop killing human beings in the first place? If mothers were not killing born human beings, then they wouldn't be ending up in the hospital with the alarming frequency that they are. If mothers were not killing preborn children through the abortion pill, they would not be ending up in the hospital at the alarming frequency that they are. Imagine we held this standard for born children, and that mothers were killing their born children and harming themselves in the process. If that was the case, why would we ever suggest that the problem is the pro-life legislation that prevents people from killing born children? No, the problem is multifold, right? The problem is, first of all, in the heat of the moment, that those medical practitioners are not familiar with relevant legislation and best practices that allows them to care for people who have done that tragic thing, whether it's killing a born child or a preborn child, that absolutely this mother can receive medical intervention. So that's the first problem in the heat of the moment. The heat of the moment that isn't familiar, or that there's medical malpractice in misinterpreting those pro-life laws. And then the deeper flaw is the fact that these mothers are choosing to kill their children, born or preborn. And so what's the difference? Well, the difference is that preborn children, mothers should be allowed to kill preborn children because they're not even humans. Boom. Now we're into the humanity of these preborn children, talking about whether or not they are living members of the human family and whether or not all living members of the human family deserve human rights. That's the route that I'm going to go: common ground, analogy, and question to demonstrate the principle that if mothers killing that when mothers choose to kill their children, if they are harmed in the process of that, what is wrong or erroneous or inappropriate in that scenario is not the pro-life legislation, which might cause medical practitioners to not fulfill their responsibilities or not be able to not believe that they can fulfill their duties because they can, as I alluded to earlier, but rather their lack of awareness and familiarity that they can fulfill their responsibilities, the lack of ability, whether they're familiar or not, to be able to appropriately and accurately diagnose the actual solution to that problem. And obviously, at the deepest and most important level, that the problem here is that these mothers are choosing to kill their children, born or preborn, and that is the ultimate solution to preventing these from happening in the future. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions or comments in the comment section on YouTube, on your favorite podcatcher. Hit me up on email at prolifeguys.com if you have questions, concerns, ideas, social media as well, Instagram or Facebook are primary. I'm sure that I check the Twitter occasionally, and so hit us up on Twitter as well if you'd like. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that offers a little bit of clarity. And as I mentioned off the top, it is vital that pro-lifers are able to respond to these questions and concerns, because if we don't, the lie will continue hurtling around the world. And if that lie reaches enough people and enough people are voting for amendments that will open up abortion access because we are trying to, quote unquote, resolve this crisis, then more children are going to die. So thanks so much for tuning in. May God bless you abundantly wherever you're at, however many hours are left in your day.